Welcome to the MLB Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We've got Mo Nawara taking a little bit of a break from us today. We are going to be looking at this Tuesday night slate here in the MLB after Labor Day. Plenty to choose from here, plenty of night games that we have as we are bringing you these evening time games each and every weekday of this MLB regular season. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where we have all of our great content up for you guys as we are headed into this fall and football season is starting, winding down in this MLB season as well. So make sure you're on thelines.com there. Also have our great odds finder tool there where you can go ahead and shop those lines to the best of your ability as you're looking at all of those MLB lines tonight. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or a DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find those listings in your area, such as what we have tonight. Nate kicking things off with my Mets finally getting an easy game against the Pirates. Mitch Keller on the mound at home for the Pirates. Taijuan Walker for the Mets, minus 215 for those Mets on the road. The Sox and Rich Hill, a game we will discuss, are in Tampa Bay taking on Drew Rasmussen and those Tampa Bay Rays, minus 165 for the Rays at home. The Marlins and Jesus Luzardo are in Philly taking on Aaron Nola, minus 225 for Nola and the Phils at home. Joe Ryan and the Twins are in New York taking on the Yanks and Garrett Cole, minus 195 for Cole and the Yanks at home. The Blue Jays and Mitch White are in Baltimore taking on Kyle Bradish and the O's, minus 110 for both teams in this one. Justin Dunn and the Reds are in Chicago taking on those Cubs. Wade Miley on the mound for Chicago, minus 165 for the Cubbies. Paolo Espino and the Nats are in St. Louis taking on the Cards. Jose Quintana on the mound, minus 250 for Quintana at home. Glenn Otto and the Rangers are in Houston and taking on our favorite Framber Valdez, minus 265 for Framber and the Stros at home. The Guardians and Shane Bieber are minus 195 on the road in Kansas City against Chris Bubich and those Royals. Brandon Woodruff and the Brewers are minus 190 in Colorado and Chad Kuhl on the mound for the Rockies. Eduardo Rodriguez and the Tigers are in LA. Anaheim taking on Mike Mayers and the Angels, minus 135 for the Angels at home there. Kyle Wright and the Bravos are in Oakland as minus 225 favorites, taking on Cole Irvin on the mound for the A's. The Diamondbacks, Merrill Kelly in San Diego taking on Joe Musgrove, minus 165 for the flamethrowing Joe Musgrove and the Pods at home. And finishing things off, the ageless Johnny Cueto and the White Sox are in Seattle taking on the Mariners and Logan Gilbert, minus 150 for those M's at home. So I toss it to you, Nate, to kick things off for us with Rich Hill and Drew Rasmussen in that Boston-Tampa Bay matchup. Rich Hill not looking too good as of late. Drew Rasmussen, complete opposite. I think you've got a clear favorite on the mound with Rasmussen, minus 162. Is that where you're starting things off for us here in this matchup?
Yeah, I'm going to fade the Red Sox if I get a chance here. But for me, it's the bigger picture is more about what the Rays need to do in that AL wildcard race, or maybe even to catch the Yankees, because they have such a tough schedule after this series against the Red Sox. They have the Jays 8 times, Astros 6 times, series against Yankees, Guardians, and then basically their 2 series against the Red Sox are the ones they need to get. And it's a good matchup for them because they do all the things well in the margins that the Red Sox do not, namely bullpen, base running, defense. This is not a fundamental Red Sox team. So Tampa Bay is 10-4 against them this season, and they're 45-24 at home overall. I mean, they love the chop. The team ERA drops to 2.8 when they're home, and over the last 30 days, you look at the discrepancy in team ERA. It's drastic. I mean, Tampa's the second best. Boston's the second worst. Bullpen about the same as well there. Rich Hill, I mean, he did have a really good start against Tampa just 10 days ago at Fenway, which is strange because, usually he's getting rocked at home. But that Rays lineup is a little top-heavy right now. Still waiting on some guys to get back for sure. But with Manuel Margot in there to platoon against Hill, I definitely think they can get some runs on the board. I mean, in that start against the Rays, he had 11 Ks, but 46% hard hit rate. He seems a bit fortunate to have avoided any damage there. Rasmussen is one of those rare guys who's actually going long for the Rays and no longer just a 4 or 5 inning opener for them. And another guy who's just loved pitching at the Trop at home this year, 6-1. ERA under 2, whip of 0.8, 5.5 K to walk, and in his last 4 starts, he has a 20-2 K to walk ratio. The Boston offense has been hot. They've also been striking out a lot lately. Rays offense has somehow been hot too, despite the fact that they don't really have a lot of names you've heard of in that bottom half of the lineup. So minus 160, I think, is a fair price for a team that is ascending, that is in contention, versus a Red Sox team that's doing nothing but playing spoiler. And I think maybe the market influenced by them sweeping the Rangers over the weekend. That's really neither here nor there. That's actually the worst team in one-run games this season, and the Rays thrive in that kind of close game. So I see another close game here between these two teams, but that's why I definitely give the edge to the Rays because of that bullpen and because of what they do to win close games.
Yeah, it's almost like we'd feel a lot better if Rich Hill had that Tampa Bay bullpen behind him, as opposed to Drew Rasmussen, who, as you mentioned, is one of the few pitchers in this lineup that is going to go past that 4 or 5 innings mark, or in some cases 3 innings for a lot of these Rays pitchers. I like the fact that we shouldn't see too much hitting. That 7 is a really low number for that total that I probably would stay away from and just take advantage of the fact that there's a much better pitcher on the mound for the Rays, despite the fact that the Red Sox are still hitting slightly better than the Rays, even though they're far out of contention, and the Rays are going and fighting for that AL East. But plenty of reason to love fading the Boston Red Sox, as we have been doing for the past 2 or 3 weeks now, and no reason to dislike that in this pitching matchup. So another game here that we have a pitching matchup, and honestly, 2 teams fighting for a playoff spot here in the Mariners, minus 142 in Chicago against the White Sox. And as I mentioned, the pretty much ageless Johnny Cueto, who, it should be mentioned, started the year off in the minors and has played 20 games for the White Sox this season, 2.93 ERA, allowing 3 runs only twice in all of those 20 matchups. So Cueto continues to impress in a matchup here where I do think that there's something to be said with Logan Gilbert also pitching super well. There is something to be said about an under of 7.5 runs. Either way, I do think that it's worth it to consider. I know that you like the Mariners in this one. I just love what I've seen from Cueto as of late. Lance Lynn also had a really great start. So these ageless pitchers for them continue to hit. And I think the fact that they're 7.5 games back and still have something to play for with a month left is a little bit surprising and something that I continue to ride a little bit of that magic. But the Mariners have also made them the moves to put themselves in the position they're in right now. So minus 142 for them. Is that where you look in this game in terms of angles?
I like the under too, and I think a lot of people do. I think it's already moved from 8 to 7.5 at FanDuel because, Cueto, despite what you see from the numbers, he just is a magic man in terms of not giving up any production. I mean, and the Mariners, you bring up a good point with Lance Lynn. I mean, they're just such a young lineup, so chase happy at times, that these veterans can take advantage of them. And they have a low average, just 216 over the last month. But they, as a staff, third best ERA and the second best bullpen. And Logan Gilbert is nasty. I mean, he's been on fire his last 4 since he was rocked by the Yankees in consecutive starts. This White Sox lineup is not particularly scary. No Tim Anderson, of course. Luis Robert, not really healthy. Cueto on the road, 1.8 ERA, allowing 0.6 homers, allowing an 18% line drive rate in general. So lots to like about the under here. I definitely lean towards the Mariners at home here, but the number's drifting up to minus 150 and higher, and I don't think it's worth it at that point. I think what you want to do is parlay Mariners and under, which sometimes you can get it frozen at what it was originally. Maybe you can get it at 8 runs at FanDuel, which they're giving you plus 220 right now for the Mariners money line and the under. That bullpen's so good. Neither of these offenses are really lighting it up. They just played a low-scoring game on Labor Day, and both these pitchers are capable of going 6-7 innings with limited production. So maybe look at the first half under, but I like the juice you get if you parlay those results as a correlation to say Logan Gilbert's going to be solid and the bullpen's going to back him up, and that's how the Mariners are going to win.
Yeah, no, I agree with that game theory entirely. I mean, that's sort of the formula for those Mariners all season. and a team that's much more formidable than we probably predicted, specifically for that reason. So I think that's a good theory there in terms of how you see this game going down if you do see the Mariners winning this one, which is still pretty likely. So let's finish things off here with two teams that seem to be going still in kind of separate directions. The Diamondbacks, one of the hottest teams in baseball, won 9 of 11. We've been talking about them a little bit, especially when they have Merrill Kelly on the mound, who has been an ace, taking on another guy who has also been an ace for most of the season. A little bit of faltering in the second half for Joe Musgrove and the Padres, which is where this game is in San Diego. As I said, Merrill Kelly, plenty to like right now. I think the other thing that's pretty interesting about this is the Padres are basically the worst team at home against the spread this season, 21-43 at home, where the Diamondbacks 39-24 on the road, pretty much the best mark there. So something that probably would surprise most people if you just look at the standings in that NL West and assume that the Diamondbacks are just much, much, much worse. But in this situation, especially with Merrill Kelly continuing to impress the way that he is, I really think there's plenty of reason to consider Arizona, right? Plus 140 or so without too much line movement there. I think that's something that we can probably take advantage of.
Yeah, that's pretty much perfect to what you would expect from the Padres, is to perform below expectations for the last couple of years now, swinging big at the trade deadline, and then they're just 13-14 since they got Juan Soto on board. Josh Hader struggling in that bullpen. Blake Snell still hasn't found his footing. I mean, that's not relevant here. We're talking about Musgrove, who has really slowed down in the second half, really since July 1st, 4.25 ERA. In the second half, 4.7 ERA, allowing a 261 batting average. His last two home starts have been around 93% zone contact, and people are still hitting his pitches outside the zone, too. So, I mean, he's throwing some very hittable stuff. The Diamondbacks have been stunningly hot lately. Another team that seems to be ahead of schedule in their rebuild, and they're 18-10 over the last month. Also profitable on the road, especially when they throw one of these two guys that we love to target, Kelly or Zach Gallen. Kelly, just filthy since you look at his numbers second half. ERA under 2, 0.9 whip, 195 batting average against. His last 9 against the Padres, actually, even better with a 1.03 ERA. He's 7-1 in his last 9 against this team. But the Diamondbacks have the worst bullpen in the majors. So if you don't want to get on board with that, and with the plus 140, I think it's still worth a roll of the dice. With the way the Padres, just the mood around this team is, I wouldn't be surprised if they just drop another one here. But for Arizona to just be leading after the first half, money line is plus 180, and then you don't have to worry about that bullpen. You just say, I think they're going to tag Musgrove for a few, and Merrill Kelly's just going to keep being lights out. So that's where I would get the best juice here, rather than, depending on Arizona closing this game, but it's still certainly possible. I mean, they've been closing games despite the bullpen woes because their offense has shown a tendency to just erupt here from time to time and to play spoiler as they've done routinely over this last month. So I think that the Padres are ripe to be spoiled.
Yeah, and that your turn, my turn scenario with Gallen and Merrill Kelly, as you mentioned, for the Diamondbacks, should be a pretty nice 1-2 punch for a while for that team. As you said, seeming to arrive a little bit early here. So we only have roughly 28, 29, maybe 30 games left for each of these squads as we're coming down to the stretch here, Nate. Plenty of great action coming up, as that is all the time we have for you in this one. So make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to follow along with us each and every weekday of this regular season. So until we see you next, happy betting.